22-year-old feeds disabled boy with her last money. Unaware his father is a billionaire. CEO, before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. New York City's bustling streets seemed especially unforgiving that evening. Rain pelted down in icy sheets as Zoe Matthews hurried into Jerry's diner, seeking refuge from both the weather and her growling stomach. With only $12 to her name and rent due in 3 days, she clutched her worn wallet tightly, mentally calculating how to stretch this meager amount until her next paycheck. The diner was nearly empty, its fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over the chipped formica tables. Zoe slid into a booth by the window, her damp clothes sticking uncomfortably to her skin. As she studied the menu, searching for the cheapest item, her attention was drawn to a soft mechanical whirring sound. In the corner sat a boy, no more than 10 years old, alone in a motorized wheelchair. What struck Zoe wasn't the wheelchair itself, but the profound loneliness etched across his face as he stared out the rain-streaked window. His small fingers tapped restlessly on the controller of his chair, and occasionally he would spin it slightly, as if practicing maneuvers to pass the time. Something about his solitude resonated deep within Zoe. She knew that look, had worn it herself through countless foster homes and lonely cafeteria tables. When the waitress brought her plain cheeseburger, Zoe found herself standing up, sandwich in hand, and walking toward the boy's table. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, offering a warm smile. "I hate eating alone, and you look like you might be good company." The boy looked up, surprised. His eyes, an intense shade of blue, widened with uncertainty. "I'm Zoe," she continued, sliding into the seat opposite him. "And this is a pretty big sandwich for just one person." "I'm Ryan," he replied softly, his voice stronger than his fragile appearance suggested. "Dad says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." "Your dad is absolutely right," Zoe nodded seriously. "But what if I share half my sandwich with you? That would make us sandwich friends, which is definitely not strangers." A small smile crept across Ryan's face. "I don't think that's how it works." "Sure it is," Zoe insisted, already cutting her sandwich with the plastic knife. "My foster mom, Mrs. Benson, always said breaking bread together makes people family for at least one meal." As she pushed half the sandwich toward him, Ryan's hesitation melted away. They fell into easy conversation. He told her about his robot collection and how he was designing modifications for his wheelchair. Zoe shared stories about her engineering, classes at community college, classes she'd had to abandon when the tuition money ran out. "Are you hungry?" she asked, noticing how quickly he'd devoured his half. "I could get you something else if you want." Ryan's eyes lit up. "Really? Dad? Went to take a call and I'm still hungry." Without hesitation, Zoe signaled the waitress and ordered Ryan a proper meal, chocolate milkshake included, spending the last of her cash. She would go hungry tonight, but the joy on the boy's face was worth every penny. What Zoe didn't notice was the man sitting 3 booths away, watching the entire interaction with intense interest. Jack Reynolds, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans rather than his usual tailored suits, had stepped away to take an urgent business call, leaving his son alone for just 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, a stranger had shown his son more genuine kindness than most of Jack's wealthy associates had in a lifetime. As Zoe and Ryan chatted about robotics and wheelchair designs, Jack remained silent, observing the natural ease between them. For the first time since the accident that had claimed his wife and left Ryan paralyzed, Jack saw his son laughing, really laughing. When Zoe eventually stood to leave, having given Ryan her last dollar but filled with a warmth money couldn't buy, she didn't notice Jack discreetly paying her bill. Nor did she realize that this chance encounter had just changed the trajectory of 3 lives forever. Ryan watched her go, clutching a napkin where she'd sketched a design improvement for his wheelchair. "Bye, Zoe," he called after her. "Maybe I'll see you again?" "I hope so, buddy," she replied with a wave, stepping back into the rain with empty pockets but a full heart. And in that moment, fate had set its wheels in motion. The next afternoon, Zoe adjusted her new waitress uniform, still stiff from the package. After yesterday's encounter with Ryan, She'd boldly asked about job openings at Jerry's Diner and, to her surprise, was hired on the spot. "Order up for table 7, called Marge, the battle-hardened head waitress. Zoe grabbed the plates and turned, only to freeze in place. There at table 7 sat Ryan, his face lighting up when he spotted her. Beside him was a man she hadn't properly noticed yesterday, tall with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners despite his serious expression. "Zoe," Ryan exclaimed. "Dad, this is her, the sandwich lady." Approaching their table, Zoe couldn't help but smile. "Well, if it isn't my favorite engineering consultant, I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "I told Dad we had to come back," Ryan explained proudly. "Plus, I brought something to show you." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small robot toy, its arm hanging disconnected. "It broke yesterday, I can't fix it." The man, Ryan's father, extended his hand. "I'm Jack. My son hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday." His handshake was firm, his voice deeper than she expected. Up close, Zoe noticed the quality of his casual clothes and the expensive watch he'd tried to conceal under his sleeve. "Nice to meet you properly," she replied, suddenly aware of her discount. "Store uniform." Jack gestured to the broken toy. "Ryan insisted we come back so you could see if it's fixable. He said you're an engineer." "Engineering student," Zoe corrected. Or was anyway. She examined the toy. "This is an easy fix. Do you mind if I—" Without waiting for permission, she grabbed a paper clip from the counter, a rubber band from her wrist, and a plastic straw. Within minutes, she had fashioned a makeshift repair. "Try it now," she said, handing it back to Ryan. When he pressed the button, the robot's arm moved again. His eyes widened in amazement. "You fixed him! How did you do that?" "Matthews," barked the manager from across the diner. "Stop wasting time and get back to work." Zoe winced. "Sorry, I should—" "Is there a problem?" Jack asked the manager, his tone suddenly commanding. "No problem, sir," the manager replied, clearly recognizing something in Jack that Zoe had missed. "Take your time." Ryan tugged at Zoe's sleeve. "Can you come again tomorrow? I have more robots at home." Before Zoe could answer, Jack added, "We'd appreciate it." Ryan doesn't connect with people easily. Something in his expression, a mixture of hope and vulnerability, made it impossible to refuse. "Same time tomorrow," she promised. As they left, Ryan waved enthusiastically from his wheelchair. What Zoe couldn't know was that in Jack's car, the serious CEO of Reynolds Technologies was asking his son, "What do you think of Zoe?" And Ryan, clutching his repaired robot, simply answered, "She sees me, Dad. Not just the chair." Jerry's Diner became their unofficial meeting place. 2 weeks into their new routine, Zoe found herself anticipating Ryan's arrival each day. She'd started keeping small mechanical trinkets in her pocket. Rubber bands, paper clips, even tiny gears salvaged from broken watches, knowing Ryan would bring something new for her to fix. Today, as she refilled salt shakers during her break, Ryan and Jack arrived right on schedule. "Zoe," Ryan called, maneuvering his wheelchair skillfully between tables. "Look what I made." He proudly displayed a crude drawing of a wheelchair with rocket boosters. "Rocket-powered wheelchair?" Zoe laughed, examining the drawing. "That's some serious engineering, buddy." "I figured out how to make my chair faster," Ryan explained enthusiastically. "Dad says I can't actually add rockets, though." "Safety concerns," Jack added with a wry smile. As Ryan chattered about his design modifications, Zoe noticed Jack watching them with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between gratitude and guilt. "How long has Ryan been in the wheelchair?" she asked quietly when the boy became distracted by the dessert menu. Jack's expression darkened. "About a year. Car accident. The same one that took his mother." The words hung heavy between them. Zoe wanted to reach out to offer comfort, but before she could, a loud voice interrupted their moment. "Hey, wheelchair kid! Move it! You're blocking the aisle!" A burly man in an expensive suit stood impatiently behind Ryan's chair, his face twisted in annoyance. Ryan's shoulders hunched immediately, his earlier confidence evaporating. Jack began to stand, fury flashing across his face, but Zoe was faster. Excuse. Me, she said, stepping between Ryan and the man. He has a name. It's Ryan, and he's not blocking anything except maybe your manners. The man scoffed. Listen, waitress. No, you listen, Zoe interrupted, voice steady despite her racing heart. This is a 10-year-old child you're talking to. If you can't show basic respect, you can find somewhere else to eat. The diner fell silent. The manager emerged from the kitchen, face pale. Miss Matthews, that's enough. Jack stood smoothly. I'll handle this, he said quietly, guiding the man away with surprising authority, speaking in low tones. Whatever he said made the man leave quickly. When Jack returned, Ryan looked up at Zoe with wonder. Nobody ever stands up for me like that. Well, they should, Zoe replied firmly, straightening his collar, because you're worth standing up for. Later, as they were leaving, Ryan pressed a folded paper into Zoe's hand. I made this for you. Alone after her shift, Zoe unfolded it. A crayon drawing of herself wearing a cape, standing protectively beside Ryan's wheelchair. At the bottom, in childish handwriting, My hero, Zoe. She didn't know that across town, in a penthouse office, overlooking the city, Vanessa Clark was questioning her brother-in-law about his extended lunch breaks. You've missed 3 board meetings this month, Jack, she said, studying his face. What's so important at some diner? Jack merely smiled, touching the identical drawing Ryan had made for him. Just reconnecting with what matters, Vanessa. But the look in her eyes suggested the calm wouldn't last much longer. A month into their friendship, Zoe found herself sitting across from Jack at a corner table, while Ryan tested his wheelchair maneuvers near the diner's entrance. The evening crowd had thinned, giving them a rare moment of privacy. He practices those turns for hours at home, Jack said, watching his son with unmistakable pride. Before he met you, he'd barely touched the controls. Zoe smiled, warming her hands around her coffee mug. He's determined. That'll take him far. Further than his doctors predicted, Jack admitted. They said he might never accept the chair. He hesitated before adding, I haven't seen him this engaged since before the accident. As rain began pattering against the windows, Jack's voice dropped lower. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing, Zoe. Being a father was hard enough when Mary was alive. Now. You're doing better than you think, Zoe assured him. Ryan's an incredible kid. Thanks to his mother, Jack replied. I'm just trying not to mess up what she started. Something in his vulnerable admission opened a door in Zoe. I lost my parents when I was 7, she shared. Car accident. Bounced through foster homes until I aged out. Jack's gaze softened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me resilience. She watched Ryan execute a perfect figure 8. That's what Ryan has too. Resilience. Their moment was interrupted by Ryan's excited voice. Dad, Zoe, look at this new move. As he demonstrated, a spin. His chair suddenly jerked and made an ominous grinding sound. Ryan's face fell. It's doing it again. Zoe approached, kneeling beside the wheelchair. Mind if I take a look? With Ryan's eager permission, she examined the control panel and wheels, then retrieved her makeshift toolkit from behind the counter. Your calibration's off, she explained, making minor adjustments. And this wire connection is loose. Let's test it now. Ryan cautiously moved the joystick and his eyes widened when the chair responded smoothly. It's fixed. Try something challenging, Zoe encouraged. Emboldened, Ryan attempted a tight turn around a table but misjudged the distance. The chair tilted precariously. Jack lunged forward, panic crossing his face, but Zoe was already there, steadying the chair with firm hands. Easy there, speedster, she laughed. You're okay. Instead of being frightened, Ryan was exhilarated. Did you see that, Dad? I almost did it. I saw, Jack replied, his voice strained. Next time you'll nail it, Zoe assured Ryan. Falling is part of learning. Later, as Ryan chatted with Marge about milkshake flavors, Jack pulled Zoe aside. Thank you, he said quietly. You didn't panic. Neither did he, Zoe pointed out. That's what matters. Jack studied her face. Would you... He started, then paused. Ryan would love it if you'd come for dinner sometime. At our place. I'd like that. Zoe replied, surprised by the flutter in her stomach. As they left, Ryan waved enthusiastically. See you tomorrow, Zoe. Watching them go, Zoe didn't notice Marge's knowing smile. That's not just a grateful dad look he's giving you, honey. The older waitress commented. That's something else entirely. Zoe blushed, pushing away the thought. A man like Jack, whatever his story, lived in a different world than hers. Didn't he? The address Jack had given Zoe led to an elegant building with a uniformed doorman. She double-checked the paper, certain there was a mistake. The modest father and son from the diner couldn't possibly live here. Miss Matthews? The doorman smiled. Mr. Reynolds is expecting you. Penthouse floor. Penthouse. Zoe's stomach knotted as the elevator climbed. When the doors opened, Ryan was waiting, his wheelchair decorated with twinkling lights. You came, he exclaimed, spinning in an excited circle. I made the apartment wheelchair accessible for the tour. Come on. He led her through a sprawling apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Minimalist furniture, original artwork, and cutting-edge technology filled the space that was easily 20 times the size of her studio apartment. And this is Dad's office, Ryan continued, pushing open double doors to reveal what looked like a corporate command center. He does his computer stuff here. Jack emerged from the kitchen, wearing an apron over his casual clothes. Ryan, maybe Zoe would like to relax before the grand tour. It's beautiful, Zoe managed, trying to reconcile this luxurious penthouse with the man who ordered coffee and apple pie at a corner diner. Over dinner, a surprisingly tasty pasta Jack had prepared himself, Zoe attempted normalcy. So how's the IT job going? She asked, remembering his vague mention of working with computers. An awkward silence fell. Ryan looked confusedly at his father. Actually, Jack began, but was interrupted by the elevator's arrival ping. A delivery. Man stepped out with a package. Evening, Mr. Reynolds. New prototype from R&D as requested. His eyes widened upon seeing Zoe. Sorry to interrupt, sir. Didn't realize you had company. Thank you, Jim, Jack replied tensely. The man nodded respectfully. Of course, Mr. CEO, sir. As the elevator doors closed, Zoe set down her fork. CEO? Ryan looked between them, sensing the shift. Dad runs Reynolds Technologies. Everyone knows that. The world tilted beneath Zoe. Reynolds Technologies, the multinational corporation whose building she passed daily, whose scholarship program she'd been rejected from twice. Not just wealthy, but industry titan wealthy. You lied to me, she whispered. I never actually said, a lie of omission is still a lie, Zoe cut in, rising from her chair. Why? Was this amusing for you? Slumming with the waitress? Zoe? No, Jack protested, reaching for her hand. I needed to know you saw Ryan for Ryan, not as an opportunity. An opportunity? Her voice cracked. You think I befriended a child for money? Ryan wheeled between them, distress clear on his face. Are you leaving us too? The simple question shattered Zoe's anger. She knelt beside his wheelchair. No, Ryan. I'm upset with your dad, not with you. Everyone leaves, Ryan said quietly. Mom didn't mean to, but Zoe pulled him into a gentle hug, fighting tears. I'm not leaving you, buddy. Over the boy's shoulder, she met Jack's gaze, a mixture of remorse and fear that this deception might cost him the first real connection his son had made since the accident. I should go, Zoe said finally, standing. I need to think. As the elevator doors closed, she glimpsed Ryan's crestfallen expression and Jack's defeated posture. Two lonely souls in a gilded cage that suddenly felt emptier than before. Outside, the night air cold against her heated cheeks, Zoe wondered why the revelation hurt so much. Was it the deception? Or the uncomfortable reminder of the vast distance between their worlds? For a week, Zoe served customers at Jerry's diner with mechanical efficiency, her thoughts elsewhere. Jack hadn't appeared, but Ryan came twice with a gray-haired driver, his small face hopeful as he scanned the diner for her. "He misses you," the driver said quietly as Zoe refilled Ryan's milkshake. "Both of them do." Zoe maintained her professional smile. "I'm glad to see Ryan anytime." At home that evening, she found an email from Jack. The subject line was simple. "I'm sorry. Zoe, I started with a half-truth because most people change when they discover who I am. Some want access to my wealth, others are intimidated and distance themselves. Neither serves Ryan, who needs genuine connections. What began as protection became something I couldn't gracefully undo. I won't apologize for protecting my son, but I am deeply sorry for hurting you. The man you met at Jerry's diner, that's the real me, more than any corporate persona. Jack." She closed her laptop without replying. The next day, the diner was empty save for Ryan sitting alone at their usual table. "Where's your driver?" Zoe asked, sliding into the seat opposite him. "Outside." Ryan fidgeted with his straw. "Dad doesn't know I asked him to bring me. He thinks I'm at physical therapy." Zoe frowned. "Ryan, you shouldn't skip therapy." "I stopped trying after Mom died," he admitted, staring at his hands. "The doctor said I could get stronger, maybe stand someday with braces, but I didn't care anymore." His blue eyes lifted to meet hers. "Until I met you." The simple confession knocked the breath from her lungs. "You fixed my robot when no one else bothered," Ryan continued. "You made Dad smile again. Please don't disappear because he made a mistake." Back at the penthouse that evening, Jack found Ryan at his abandoned parallel bars, gripping them with determined concentration. "What are you doing, buddy?" Jack asked, surprised. Ryan's face was flushed with effort. "Trying. Zoe says trying is better than perfect." Jack watched his son struggle to support his weight, something he'd refused to do for months. The physical therapists had almost given up, yet here he was, trying, because of Zoe. Later that night, Vanessa Clark arrived unannounced, perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. "We need to discuss the Singapore merger," she announced, striding into Jack's office. As they reviewed documents, Vanessa noticed Ryan's drawing of Zoe on Jack's desk. "Who's this?" "Someone special to Ryan," Jack replied carefully. Vanessa picked up the drawing. "A waitress? Jack, please tell me you're not involving some random woman in Ryan's life. The board already thinks you're distracted." "She's good for him, Vanessa." "Good for him or good for you?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Remember your position. The Reynolds name means something." After she left, Jack stared at the drawing, torn between his growing feelings for Zoe and the responsibilities weighing on his shoulders. Reynolds Technologies employed thousands. Ryan's medical care depended on his leadership. Yet for the first time since Mary's death, he'd glimpsed happiness, not through wealth or power, but in a diner booth, watching his son laugh with a woman who saw their true selves. The question remained, could Zoe forgive his deception, or had he ruined their chance at something real before it truly began? After days of internal debate, Zoe made her decision. Everyone deserved a second chance. Hadn't her foster mother Martha taught her that? She would hear Jack out, judge his intentions for herself. She arrived at Jerry's early, organizing her thoughts. The bell above the door jingled, but instead of Jack or Ryan, a sleek woman in designer clothes entered, her imperious gaze sweeping the diner before landing on Zoe. "You must be the waitress," she said, sliding into a booth and motioning for Zoe to join her. Reluctantly, Zoe sat across from her. "And you are?" "Vanessa Clark, Vice President of Reynolds Technologies." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Jack's sister-in-law. I believe you've been spending time with my nephew."
"Ryan is a wonderful kid," Zoe replied cautiously. Vanessa opened her purse and withdrew a checkbook. "Let's be direct. Jack Reynolds is vulnerable since losing my sister. His judgment is compromised." She wrote deliberately, then slid a check
Across the table. "This should compensate for any attachments you've formed." Zoe stared at the check, an amount that would pay her rent for 2 years. You're paying me to disappear? Consider it severance for a relationship that was never going to work. Vanessa leaned forward. Jack moves in circles you can't imagine. The board is already concerned about his focus. Ryan needs stability, not some waitress playing family. Heat rushed to Zoe's face as she tore the check in half. Ryan needs people who care about him, not his family's status. You can't buy me off. Everyone has a price, Vanessa insisted, reaching for her checkbook again. Not for abandoning a child who trusts me. Zoe stood, trembling with anger. Ryan's worth more than any amount you could write. As she stormed toward the kitchen, she didn't notice Ryan at the entrance, his wheelchair half hidden behind a partition, his eyes wide with shock. 10 minutes later, Marge found Zoe in the supply closet. Someone's looking for you, honey. Wiping her eyes, Zoe emerged to find the diner empty except for the driver who had brought Ryan earlier. Miss Matthews, Ryan's runoff, he explained urgently. He overheard everything with Ms. Clark. I tried to stop him, but he's quite skilled with that chair when motivated. He said he was going to find you. Panic seized her. In this rain? Which way did he go? They searched for 30 minutes before Zoe's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Is this Zoe? A tearful voice asked. It's Ryan. My chair got stuck. In a puddle. I'm at the park across from your apartment. How do you know where I live? Dad has your address from your job application. Please don't be mad. Stay there, I'm coming. She found him huddled beneath a park shelter, soaked and shivering, his wheelchair caked with mud. Without hesitation, she knelt and wrapped him in her jacket. You heard what your aunt said, she murmured, brushing wet hair from his forehead. Ryan nodded miserably. She wants you to go away. Everyone goes away. Not me. Zoe pulled him close. I don't care about money or status. I care about you. Promise? I promise, buddy. They didn't notice the black SUV screeching to a halt across the street or Jack rushing toward them, panic etched on his face. He stopped short at the sight of them, his son safe in Zoe's protective embrace despite everything his family had done to push her away. In that moment, watching them through the rain, Jack Reynolds made a decision that would change everything. And Ray, engineering internship? Zoe stared at the glossy brochure Jack had placed on her tiny kitchen table 3 days after the park incident. At Reynolds Technologies? Jack sat across from her in the cramped studio apartment, looking oddly at ease, despite being wildly out of place among her thrift store furniture. The Adaptive Technology Division. They develop solutions for people with disabilities. Like Ryan, Zoe said softly. Exactly. Jack leaned forward. Your mechanical aptitude, your way of seeing possibilities others miss. We need that. This isn't charity, Zoe. It's recognition of your talent. She traced the embossed logo on the brochure, her engineering dreams flickering back to life. Yet doubt crept in. What would Vanessa say? Vanessa doesn't make hiring decisions. His jaw tightened. She's been handled. And people won't think. I'm just... Zoe struggled to find the right words. Sleeping your way to the top? Jack supplied bluntly. Anyone who meets you knows your worth has nothing to do with me. Before she could respond, a mechanical whirring announced Ryan's arrival. He wheeled into the apartment, inspecting every corner with undisguised curiosity. Your place is small, he declared with a child's honesty. Ryan, Jack admonished. It's okay, Zoe laughed. It is small. I like it, Ryan decided. It feels like you. He produced a notebook from his backpack. I brought my robot designs. Can we work on them here? The afternoon transformed into an impromptu engineering session. Zoe's kitchen table became a workshop as they sketched improvements for Ryan's robotic projects. Jack ordered pizza, and somehow the cramped apartment felt more like home than it ever had. As sunset painted her small window in amber hues, Ryan persuaded them to attempt cookie baking. The kitchen wasn't designed for 3 people, especially with one in a wheelchair, but they managed, flour dusting their clothes, and laughter filling the tiny space. "Dad, watch this," Ryan called, maneuvering to the living area where his physical therapy bars had been set up. Jack and Zoe turned from their baking disaster to see Ryan gripping the parallel bars, determination etched on his face as he pulled himself up. 1, 2. Ryan counted through gritted teeth, his arms trembling as he supported his weight for 5 seconds, longer than ever before. When he eased back into his chair, his face glowed with triumph. "Did you see?" "I saw, buddy," Jack whispered, voice thick with emotion. They celebrated with lopsided, slightly burned cookies. As Ryan devoured his third, Jack cleared his throat. About that internship. Zoe watched Ryan, flour streaking his hair, happier than she'd ever seen him. Taking the internship would mean stepping into Jack's world. Complicated, high stakes, filled with people like Vanessa. But it also meant being part of Ryan's journey. "I'll do it," she decided, "but on one condition. I prove myself on my own merits. No special treatment." Jack's smile lit his entire face. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As they were leaving, Ryan pressed a small package into her hands. "For your first day." Later, alone in her apartment, Zoe unwrapped it. A little robot, figure made from bent paper clips and rubber bands, materials she'd used that first day to fix his toy. A note in childish handwriting read, "To Zoe, who fixes everything." She placed it carefully on her dresser, a talisman for the new chapter. Ahead, whatever challenges awaited at Reynolds Technologies, that little robot reminded her why she was taking the risk. For Ryan. And perhaps, she admitted to herself, for Jack too. Zoe's first week at Reynolds Technologies was a whirlwind of contradictions. The sleek glass building intimidated her, yet the adaptive technology lab felt instantly familiar. Her colleagues were brilliant, but whispers followed her through hallways. "That's Jack Reynolds' girlfriend," or "She's only here because of Ryan." Determined to prove herself, Zoe arrived earlier and stayed later than anyone. By Friday, she had already identified 3 design flaws in their current wheelchair prototype and suggested practical solutions. These modifications could reduce production costs by 15%, she explained to her team leader Martin, who studied her diagrams with growing respect. "Where did you learn to think like this?" he asked. Zoe smiled. "Jerry's Diner. You'd buy coat. Be surprised what you can fix with limited resources." That afternoon, as Zoe tested calibrations on a motorized arm brace, excited voices approached the lab. The door burst open, and Ryan wheeled in, his face alight with enthusiasm. "Surprise. Inspection," he announced importantly, wearing a miniature lab coat matching those of the engineers. Behind him, Jack followed with an apologetic smile. "Someone couldn't wait until dinner to see your new workplace," he explained. Ryan immediately commanded everyone's attention, proudly introducing Zoe to her colleagues. "This is Zoe, she's almost family," he declared, oblivious to the raised eyebrows his statement caused. As Ryan inspected the lab's equipment with unbridled curiosity, Martin sidled up to Zoe. "Now I understand your insights into accessibility design," he murmured. "You've had a passionate consultant." "Ryan's taught me more than any textbook could," Zoe admitted. The afternoon shifted into an impromptu demonstration when Ryan volunteered to test the prototype wheelchair controls. Engineers gathered, impressed by his detailed feedback and Zoe's intuitive adjustments based on his responses. "We should hire him as a consultant," joked one engineer, but the suggestion held merit. As the visit concluded, Jack pulled Zoe aside. "You've impressed them," he said quietly. "Martin's report mentions your contributions 3 times. "Really?" Her chest swelled with pride. "Really?" Jack's hand briefly touched hers. "Dinner tonight to celebrate your first week?" Ryan's choice. "Of restaurant." "McDonald's then," Zoe laughed. "A 5-star dining experience." Their moment was interrupted by Vanessa's sharp voice. "Jack, the Tokyo investors are waiting in the conference room." She swept into the lab, her gaze cooling as it landed on Zoe. How quaint. Bring your waitress to work day. Jack stiffened. Zoe is part of the adaptive technology team now, Vanessa. Of course she is. Vanessa's smile was glacial. The board is eager to discuss this talent acquisition at next week's meeting. After they departed, Ryan wheeled to Zoe's side. Aunt Vanessa doesn't like you, he observed matter-of-factly. No, she doesn't, Zoe agreed, kneeling to his level. Is it because you and Dad look at each other like people in movies? Heat rushed to Zoe's cheeks. What do you mean? You know, all smiley and googly-eyed when you think no one's looking. He spun his chair in a small circle. Mom used to say Dad had a terrible poker face. I didn't understand then, but I do now. Before Zoe could formulate a response, Ryan continued. I think it's good. Dad was sad for so long. You make him not sad. His simple assessment lingered with Zoe long after Ryan left with his father. As she packed up her workstation, she wondered, was she ready for the complications of falling for Jack Reynolds? More importantly, was she prepared for the forces that would try to keep them apart? Vanessa's cold smile flashed in her memory. The real battle, Zoe suspected, had only just begun. Jack's glass-walled office offered a panoramic view of the city. But today the vista brought no comfort. Across from him sat 3 stern-faced board members, with Vanessa standing behind them, arms crossed in triumph. This relationship compromises your judgment, Jack, Harrison Weber, the eldest board member, declared. A waitress with no credentials suddenly heading our adaptive technology initiative? Zoe Matthews has shown exceptional engineering aptitude, Jack countered. Her designs could revolutionize our accessibility products. Vanessa stepped forward, sliding a folder across the polished table. The board's concerns extend beyond your professional decisions. Your personal involvement with Ms. Matthews raises questions about your stability since Mary's death. Jack's blood ran cold as he opened the folder. Legal documents. A custody petition for Ryan with Vanessa named as guardian. What is this, he demanded, voice dangerously quiet. A contingency, Vanessa replied smoothly. Ryan needs stability. Your judgment appears increasingly erratic, disappearing for hours, bringing unqualified romantic interests into the company, neglecting board obligations. Jack stood slowly, restraining the fury building inside him. My son is not a contingency. Vanessa, we're concerned about both Reynolds Technologies and Ryan's well-being, Weber interjected. Perhaps a leave of absence would... Get out. Jack's voice was steel. All of you, now. After they filed out, Vanessa lingered. Mary would be disappointed, Jack. She built this company with you and now you risk everything for... Don't you dare speak for my wife. Jack cut her off. Mary valued authenticity above all else, something you've never understood. The hearing is next week, Vanessa said coldly. I suggest you consider your priorities carefully. Alone, Jack stared at the custody papers, his world collapsing around him. If he fought for Zoe, he might lose Ryan. The company he'd built with Mary might slip from his grasp. Yet the thought of returning to his hollow existence before Zoe entered their lives seemed unbearable. Across town, Zoe hummed as she arranged Ryan's favorite robot figures on her apartment shelf. Jack was bringing him for pizza night, their Friday ritual for the past 3 weeks. A key turned in the lock. She'd given Jack one after the 3rd time Ryan insisted on visiting. You're early, she called, turning with a smile that died instantly. Jack stood alone, his expression grave. We need to talk. Those 4 words chilled her. What's happened? Is Ryan okay? Ryan's fine. He's with his tutor. Jack placed his key on her counter. Zoe, this isn't working. What isn't? But she already knew. Us. This situation. He gestured vaguely. Vanessa is petitioning for custody of Ryan. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Because of me? It's complicated. Jack wouldn't meet her eyes. The board is questioning my leadership. Ryan's care is being scrutinized. So I'm a liability, Zoe whispered. Jack's silence was answer enough. She watched him remove photos of her and Ryan from his wallet, placing them carefully on her table. You're choosing your company over Ryan's happiness, she challenged, anger rising through her hurt. I'm protecting my right to raise my son, Jack responded sharply. Without me, Ryan loses everything, his home, his school, his medical team. He loses his heart, Zoe countered. You've seen how he's thrived these past weeks. Jack moved toward the door, shoulders rigid with restrained emotion. I'm sorry, Zoe. Truly. After he left, Zoe collapsed onto her sofa, clutching the little paperclip robot Ryan had made her. She'd believed they were becoming a family. Now it seemed they'd been building on quicksand. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Where are you? Dad says pizza night is canceled. Did I do something wrong? The simple message broke her heart. She couldn't reply. What could she possibly say? Outside her window, rain began to fall, matching, the tears streaming down her face. 3 days of silence stretched like an eternity. Zoe took a sick leave from Reynolds Technologies, unable to face the whispers that would surely follow Jack's decision. She picked up extra shifts at Jerry's diner instead, finding bitter comfort in returning to where everything began. Order, up, Marge called, sliding a plate across the counter. Table 7 needs refills too. Zoe turned toward table 7 and froze. Ryan sat there alone, his face lighting up when he spotted her. Ryan? Where's your... Driver's outside, he interrupted, wheeling closer. Dad doesn't know I'm here. I told my tutor I had a stomachache. Zoe knelt beside his wheelchair. Buddy, you shouldn't lie to your tutor. You shouldn't disappear without saying goodbye, he countered, his blue eyes accusatory. Dad said you... We're busy. That's a lie, too. Guilt washed over her. Ryan, it's complicated. No, it's not, he insisted. Dad's sad again. He doesn't sleep. I hear him pacing at night. Ryan's lower lip trembled. And I miss you. I thought we were going to be a family. The simple confession shattered what remained of Zoe's composure. I miss you too, buddy. Then why did you leave us? How could she explain adult complexities to a child? Before she could formulate a response, the diner's bell jangled. Jack stood in the doorway, panic dissolving into relief when he spotted Ryan. Ryan David Reynolds, he breathed, striding toward them. Do you have any idea how worried we've been? I needed to see Zoe, Ryan replied defiantly. You wouldn't take me. Jack's eyes finally met Zoe's, and the raw pain she saw there matched her own. Could we talk? He asked quietly. Please. While Ryan happily slurped a milkshake, Jack and Zoe stepped outside the diner. I'm sorry about Ryan ambushing you, he began. I'm not, Zoe replied. At least someone in your family had the courage to face me. Jack flinched. I've handled everything wrong. Ryan won't do therapy, barely eats, stopped talking about his robots. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Turns out protecting him from losing you meant watching him shut down anyway. What about the custody battle? Still happening. The hearing's Friday. Jack's eyes held a new resolve. But I've made a decision. If keeping Reynolds Technologies means losing you and watching my son withdraw from the world again, it's not worth it. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you, Zoe Matthews. The words hung in the air between them. I've been a coward, trying to please everyone except the two people who matter most. I'm done with that. Zoe's heart raced. And Vanessa? We'll fight dirty, but I've hired the best family law attorney in the city. Jack took her hands. I need you, Zoe. Not just for Ryan, but for me. These past days without you. He shook his head. I don't want that life anymore. Hope flickered within her. What about the board? Let them replace me if they want. I'm willing to start over. His grip tightened. But I need to know if you're willing to fight alongside us. It won't be easy. Before Zoe could answer, the diner door opened. Ryan wheeled out, face sticky with ice cream. Are we a family again? He asked hopefully. Zoe looked between them. The man she'd grown to love and the boy who'd captured her heart from day one. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. I think we're about to be, she replied, squeezing Jack's hand. Ryan pumped his fist triumphantly. Finally! Now can we please do something about Aunt Vanessa? She's really ruining our happy ending. Despite everything, they laughed, a family reunited preparing for battle. The family court building loomed like a fortress of gray stone and cold justice. Inside, Zoe sat directly behind Jack, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders as they waited for proceedings to begin. Ryan, uncharacteristically somber in a button-down shirt and tie, kept his wheelchair positioned between them, a physical bridge connecting the adults he'd chosen as his family. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Eleanor Winters entered, her experienced eyes surveying the courtroom. Vanessa's legal team looked formidable, 3 attorneys in impeccable suits, armed with tablets and leather portfolios. Their opening statement painted Jack as a grieving widower whose judgment had been compromised, a CEO neglecting his responsibilities, and a father exposing his vulnerable son to instability through an inappropriate relationship with a server. Zoe felt eyes turning toward her, assessing the waitress who had supposedly derailed Jack Reynolds' life. She straightened her spine, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. Jack's attorney, Ms. Patel, responded with measured confidence. "My client has been a devoted father navigating the terrible loss of his wife while ensuring his son receives world-class care. Mr. Reynolds' relationship with Ms. Matthews has brought joy and progress to Ryan's life, evidenced by significant improvements in his physical therapy compliance and emotional well-being." The hearing proceeded with clinical efficiency. Vanessa's team called character witnesses, Ryan's former physical therapist who testified about missed appointments, a board member describing Jack's erratic leadership, and a child psychologist who had never actually met Ryan but spoke about the dangers of introducing temporary parental figures. When Zoe was called to testify, she felt Ryan squeeze her hand before she approached the stand. After being sworn in, she faced Vanessa's lead attorney, a sharp-featured man whose smile never reached his eyes. "Ms. Matthews, what were your career prospects before meeting Jack Reynolds?" The implication hung heavy in the air. Gold digger, opportunist, social climber. Zoe took a deep breath. "I was working at Jerry's Diner while saving to resume my engineering education." "And now you hold a position at Reynolds Technologies, correct?" A remarkable assent. "I earned my position through demonstrated aptitude," Zoe replied evenly. "Just as you've earned your place in Ryan's life? A convenient arrangement, wouldn't you say?" Before Zoe could respond, Jack's attorney objected, and Judge Winters sustained it. But the damage was done. The insinuation lingered. When it was Ms. Patel's turn, she asked simply, "Ms. Matthews, why do you spend time with Ryan Reynolds?" The question's simplicity caught Zoe off guard. She looked at Ryan, who watched her with complete trust. "Because he showed me his broken robot and trusted me to fix it," she answered, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her throat. "Because he faces challenges that would crush most adults with courage and humor. Because when I was alone, in this city, Ryan and his father made me feel like I belonged somewhere for the first time since losing my own family." The courtroom fell silent. Even Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The proceedings continued with expert testimonies and character witnesses until an unexpected interruption. Ryan's wheelchair moved forward, his hand raised determinedly. "Your Honor," Ms. Patel interjected, "Ryan Reynolds has requested to address the court." Judge Winters considered the boy thoughtfully. "This is unusual, but I'll hear what he has to say." Ryan wheeled to the center of the courtroom, his small frame somehow commanding the space. "I lost my mom," he began, his voice clear despite his obvious nervousness. "Then I lost my legs. Dad was sad and scared, just like me. But then we met. Zoe." He turned his wheelchair to face Vanessa directly. "Aunt Vanessa, you want to take me away from the only people who make me feel whole again. If you loved me, you wouldn't do that." The simple truth from a child's lips held more power than hours of legal arguments. As Ryan wheeled back to his father's side, Jack placed a protective hand on his shoulder, eyes glistening with pride. Judge Winters called a 30-minute recess, but the verdict seemed written in the hushed whispers that followed Ryan's testimony. Autumn painted Central Park in fiery hues 3 months after Judge Winters granted Jack permanent custody of Ryan, dismissing Vanessa's petition with a stern rebuke about using a child as leverage in corporate power struggles. The victory came with significant changes. Vanessa resigned from Reynolds Technologies following a board investigation that uncovered financial improprieties. Jack restructured his work schedule to prioritize family time, and Zoe's adaptive technology initiative became the company's fastest-growing division. On this crisp Saturday morning, the Reynolds Technologies logo dominated the park's central pavilion, where wheelchair-accessible ramps led to a stage showcasing their newest innovation. The Freedom Chair, a lightweight motorized wheelchair with intuitive controls specifically designed for children. "You ready for this, buddy?" Zoe asked, adjusting Ryan's bow tie backstage. Ryan nodded excitedly, his eyes bright with anticipation. "I've practiced my demonstration 100 times. And you'll nail it 101, she assured him, feeling a surge of pride. The Freedom Chair's control system had been inspired by Ryan's feedback, his small hands testing each prototype, his suggestions integrated into the final design. Jack appeared, looking sharp in a charcoal suit, but more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in professional settings. "Our engineering star and our test pilot ready to change the world?" he asked, kissing Zoe's cheek and ruffling Ryan's hair. The audience gathered outside represented a diverse coalition: medical professionals, disability advocates, potential investors, and families with children in wheelchairs who had been invited as special guests. Jack stepped onto the stage first, his commanding presence immediately capturing attention. "Welcome to the official launch of the Freedom Chair, Reynolds Technologies' first entry in our new Adaptive Freedom series. This project represents something deeply personal to me, not just as CEO, but as a father." He gestured toward the wings, where Ryan waited in the prototype chair. "The best innovations come from lived experience and genuine need. That's why I'd like to introduce our lead developer and the young man who inspired this entire initiative." Zoe guided Ryan onto the stage, her heart swelling as applause greeted them. Ryan moved the Freedom Chair with impressive precision, demonstrating its responsiveness and agility. "This is Ms. Zoe Matthews, our Adaptive Technology Director," Jack continued, "and my son Ryan, who's been our most demanding product tester." The audience laughed as Ryan pretended to look offended before breaking into a grin. For the next 20 minutes, they presented the Freedom Chair's features: its lightweight frame, intuitive joystick calibrated for children's motor control, customizable settings, and battery efficiency. Ryan demonstrated each feature with professional confidence that belied his age, answering technical questions alongside Zoe as if he'd been presenting to crowds his entire life. When Jack announced that the first production run would be donated to children's hospitals across the country, the applause was thunderous. As journalists surged forward with questions, Jack noticed Ryan discreetly signaling to Zoe. She nodded, understanding their private communication system. "If you'll excuse us," Jack concluded smoothly, "my family has another important appointment today." That appointment was feeding ducks by the pond, a tradition they'd established during the custody battle when they needed escape from legal tensions. Now it served as their celebration ritual, a private moment away from cameras and corporate responsibilities. As Ryan tossed breadcrumbs from his new chair, Jack pulled Zoe close. "I have something to tell you," he said quietly. "The board approved your proposal for the Reynolds Accessibility Foundation." Zoe's eyes widened. "Already? That was fast." They were impressed by today's presentation, and by you. His fingers laced through hers. "The foundation needs a director with vision, passion, and first-hand understanding of what families need." "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Reynolds?" she teased. "I'm offering you a dream," he replied, suddenly serious. "Your dream, Zoe. The one you told me about that night at the diner, making adaptive technology available to everyone, regardless of income." Ryan wheeled back to them, his face alight with excitement. "Did you tell her about the foundation?" "Just did," Jack confirmed. "And did you tell her the other thing?" Ryan pressed, his expression mischievous. Jack laughed. "Not yet. Some things require perfect timing, buddy. Zoe looked between them suspiciously. What other thing? But Ryan just winked, a gesture he'd recently perfected, and returned to the ducks, leaving Zoe to wonder what the Reynolds men were planning next. The Reynolds Accessibility Center rose from what was once an abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn, its modern glass facade reflecting the winter sunrise. 6 months of renovations had transformed the space into Zoe's vision, a facility where children with disabilities could access cutting-edge technology, therapy, and community support regardless of their financial circumstances. Today was the private tour before next week's grand opening, and Zoe's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement as she unlocked the front doors. The center represented everything she'd dreamed of since those engineering classes she'd been forced to abandon: purpose, innovation, and the chance to make a tangible difference. You ready for this? Jack asked, his hand warm against the small of her back. I've been ready my whole life, she replied, leaning briefly into his strength. Ryan wheeled ahead of them, impatient to show off the space he'd helped design. In the month since the Freedom Chair launch, he'd become an unofficial ambassador for Reynolds Adaptive Technologies, his confidence growing with each public appearance. Come on, slowpokes, he called, pressing the accessibility button that swung the doors open automatically. Inside, the entrance hall featured a wall-sized mural of children playing, each depicted with different mobility aids and abilities, all smiling. Natural light streamed through skylights, illuminating the space without the institutional harshness typical of medical facilities. This is the welcome area, Zoe explained, professional pride evident in her voice. We wanted families to feel at home from the moment they enter. They moved through the building, a robotics lab where children could learn engineering principles while customizing their mobility devices, therapy rooms equipped with specialized equipment, a sensory garden with accessible planting beds, and a technology library where families could borrow expensive adaptive equipment. This, Ryan announced importantly as they reached a large room filled with child-sized mobility equipment, is the Freedom Lab. My idea, he added with undisguised pride. The space featured parallel bars, ramps, obstacles, and practice areas, with different terrains: carpet, hardwood, tile, even gravel, allowing children to practice navigating their wheelchairs, walkers, or prosthetics in real-world conditions. It's perfect, Jack murmured, watching his son expertly maneuver his chair through the obstacle course. There's one more room, Zoe said, leading them down a hallway to a door bearing a simple plaque: Mary Reynolds Memorial Library. Jack stopped abruptly, his expression shifting to one of quiet surprise. Ryan and I thought, Zoe began hesitantly. Since Mary was a children's book author, a reading room with resources for families seemed fitting. Inside, comfortable seating areas surrounded bookshelves filled with literature about disability, family coping resources, and children's books, including Mary's complete collection prominently displayed. Jack stood motionless, staring at his late wife's books. Ryan wheeled to his father's side and took his hand. Mom would have loved this place, Ryan said softly. She always told me stories about kids who were different but special. Jack knelt beside his son's wheelchair, gathering him in a tight embrace. She would have loved it, he agreed, voice thick with emotion. And she would have been so proud of you, buddy. Zoe hung back, giving them space for this moment. Though she'd never met Mary Reynolds, she'd come to know her through Jack's stories and Ryan's memories. A brilliant, compassionate woman whose absence had left an enormous void. After a moment, Jack rose and approached Zoe, his eyes suspiciously bright. Thank you for this, he said, gesturing to the library, for remembering her. She'll always be part of Ryan's life, Zoe replied gently. And that means she's part of mine too. They stood in comfortable silence until Ryan, ever practical, announced he was hungry. As they prepared to leave, Jack led them to a quiet corner of the garden. A simple stone bench sat beneath a flowering cherry tree, with a small bronze plaque affixed to its base. I had this installed last week, he explained. I've been carrying guilt since the accident I was driving that night. His voice faltered. The roads were slick from rain. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, wondering if I could have prevented it. Zoe took his hand, saying nothing, allowing him the space to continue. For a long time, I thought punishing myself was a way of honoring Mary, keeping Ryan and me isolated, refusing happiness. He shook his head. But watching you with Ryan, seeing how you've embraced his challenges and celebrated his abilities, it's shown me what Mary would have wanted. He traced the plaque with his fingertips. Mary Elizabeth Reynolds. Her love lives on in those who remember to find joy in each day. She sounds like she was an incredible woman, Zoe said softly. She was. Jack looked up, his expression clearer than she'd ever seen it. And she would have adored you, Zoe, not just for what you've done for Ryan, but for bringing me back to life too. As they walked toward the exit, Jack paused. There's something I've wanted to ask you, but the timing never seemed right. Ryan, several feet ahead, spun his chair around with a mischievous grin. Is it time for the question? Jack laughed. Yes, buddy. I think it is. Zoe looked between them, puzzled by their cryptic exchange. What question? But Jack simply smiled, took her hand, and led her back toward the Mary Reynolds Memorial Library, where the next chapter of their story was about to begin. The Reynolds Accessibility Center buzzed with energy on its one-year anniversary celebration. Children in wheelchairs raced through specially designed obstacle courses, while parents chatted with therapists and engineers. Colorful balloons bobbed against the high ceiling, and a banner proclaimed, 1 year, 100 families served. In the center of it all stood Zoe Matthews Reynolds, clipboard in hand, directing volunteers and greeting families with the warm confidence of someone who had finally found her purpose. The simple silver band on her left hand caught the light. As she gestured, a constant reminder of how much had changed in 12 months. Mrs. Zoe, called a little girl using forearm crutches. Watch me on the ramp. Zoe paused her conversation with a donor to give her full attention to 7-year-old Lily, who had been one of their first participants. Go for it, superstar. Lily navigated the incline with practiced skill, beaming with pride as she reached the top unassisted. From across the room, Lily's mother mouthed, "Thank you," to Zoe, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. These were the moments that made everything worthwhile. The late nights designing equipment, the endless grant applications, the battles with insurance companies. Seeing children discover capabilities they never knew they had filled Zoe with a satisfaction that no engineering award could match. Ryan wheeled up beside her, now 11 and sporting a stylish haircut that made him look older than his years. The confidence he'd developed over the past year showed in everything from his posture to his voice. Dad's looking for you, he informed her, expertly balancing a plate of cupcakes on his lap. He's being all mysterious and stuff. Zoe smiled, ruffling his hair despite his protests. And I suppose you have no idea what he's planning? Ryan's attempted innocent expression wouldn't have fooled anyone. Maybe. Maybe not. But you should definitely go to the garden. Like, now. Is that an order? She teased. Yep. He spun his chair around. I'll handle things here. I'm practically running this place anyway. Laughing at his bravado, so different from the withdrawn child she'd met in that diner, Zoe made her way to the sensory garden. The space had flourished over the seasons with raised planting beds at different heights for wheelchair users and sensory-stimulating plants that children could touch, smell, and even taste. Jack stood beside the cherry tree, which was now in full bloom, its pink petals occasionally drifting down around him. He wore the relaxed smile that had become more common since he'd stepped back from day-to-day operations at Reynolds Technologies to focus on the foundation. There you are, he said, reaching for her hand. I was beginning to think Ryan forgot to deliver my message. He was very insistent, actually. Zoe stepped into his embrace, still marveling at how perfectly they fit together. What's this about? Instead of answering, Jack led her to a covered easel she hadn't noticed before. The past year has been extraordinary, he began. Watching. You build this place from an idea into a reality that changes lives every day. It's been the privilege of my life to witness. Zoe felt a blush creep up her neck. Even after a year of marriage, Jack's earnest praise still caught her off guard. We built it together, she corrected gently. No, he insisted. This was your vision. Ryan and I just helped where we could. He gestured to the covered easel. Which is why we wanted to do something special for the anniversary. With a flourish, he removed the cover to reveal an architectural rendering of a significantly expanded facility, with the Zoe Matthews Reynolds Center for Adaptive Innovation emblazoned across the top. Jack, she breathed, studying the detailed plans. Is this real? He nodded, eyes bright with excitement. The board approved the expansion last week. 3 times the space, new programs for teens and adults, and a research lab dedicated to developing the next generation of adaptive technologies. Zoe traced the rendering with trembling fingers, overwhelmed by the implications. And the name change? Non-negotiable, came Ryan's voice as he wheeled into the garden, followed by a crowd of staff, volunteers, and families. It's your center, Zoe. Always has been. Jack knelt beside his son's wheelchair, his expression suddenly serious. There's one more thing we wanted to ask you, something we've been discussing for a while now. Ryan nodded solemnly, reaching into a compartment built into his wheelchair to retrieve a small box wrapped in silver paper. What's this? Zoe asked, confusion evident in her voice. Open it, Ryan urged, practically bouncing in his seat with excitement. With curious fingers, Zoe unwrapped the package to find a simple wooden frame. Inside was a child's drawing, not one of Ryan's robot designs, but a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures. A tall man, a woman with curly hair, and between them a boy in a wheelchair. Scrawled beneath in Ryan's handwriting were the words, "My family." Turn it over, Jack instructed softly. On the back, a formal document was attached. Zoe began reading, her heart suddenly pounding as she realized what she was holding. Adoption papers. We know we're already a family in every way that matters, Jack explained, his voice gentle. But Ryan wanted to make it official. If you want to, of course. Ryan looked up at her, unexpected vulnerability in his eyes. Will you be my mom? For real? The question, so simple, yet carrying the weight of so much history and hope, left Zoe momentarily speechless. She thought back to that rainy evening at Jerry's diner, to the broken robot toy, to Ryan racing through rain puddles to reach her apartment, to their first Christmas as a family, to the quiet nights reading together in the library named for the mother he had lost. Kneeling to Ryan's level, tears streaming freely down her face, Zoe nodded. Nothing in the world would make me prouder than to be your mom. For real. Forever. Ryan launched himself from his wheelchair into her arms with a force that nearly knocked her over. Jack joined them on the ground, his strong arms encircling them, both as applause erupted from the gathered crowd. I told you she'd say yes, Ryan whispered to his father, loud enough for Zoe to hear. You're a wise man, buddy, Jack replied, pressing a kiss to his son's head before turning to Zoe. The wisest of the Reynolds men, clearly. Later, after the celebration had wound down and the last guests departed, the 3 of them lingered in the Mary Reynolds Memorial Library. Ryan had fallen asleep on one of the oversized beanbags, exhausted from the day's excitement. He looked so peaceful, Zoe observed, tucking a blanket around him. Jack wrapped his arm around her waist. You know, when Mary died, I thought our family story had ended, he confessed quietly. I couldn't imagine how Ryan and I would move forward, much less find joy again. And now? Zoe asked, leaning her head against his shoulder. Now I understand that stories don't end. They evolve. His voice carried a peaceful certainty. Mary will always be part of our story. But you, Zoe Matthews Reynolds, have given us new chapters I never dared hope for. They stood in comfortable silence watching Ryan sleep, the formal adoption papers awaiting Monday's filing resting on a nearby table. Outside the window, the cherry tree's blossoms caught the last golden light of day. A sandwich, Zoe mused, with a small laugh. Jack looked at her questioningly. It all started with a sandwich I could barely afford, shared with a boy I didn't know. She smiled at the memory. Who would have thought that one small act would lead to all of this? Jack pulled her closer. I believe Mary would say that's how the best stories always begin, with a simple act of kindness that ripples outward. changing everything in its path. As darkness fell outside and the center's automatic lights dimmed to their nighttime setting, the three figures remained together, no longer strangers brought together by chance, but a family bound by choice, compassion, and a love that had overcome every obstacle placed in its path. In his sleep, Ryan smiled, one hand clutching the adoption papers, the other reaching out to where his parents stood watch. And in that quiet moment, the journey that had begun with a shared sandwich in a corner diner found its perfect completion. Not an ending, but a beautiful, promising beginning.